Guys, welcome to the Laying Foundations podcast. This is your co-host Davis Hambrick. Joining alongside me today is Walker Lott. What's up, Walker?
Good afternoon, Davis. How you doing, man? You have a good weekend so far?
Yeah, man, I'm excited. Had a great weekend, got some rest, and I'm
There you
ready
go.
for this next week.
I hear you. I finished up all my exams, so I am home free
There you
until
go.
end of May, and then I'm
Yeah.
back again.
And then you start thesis, man.
And then I start thesis, the infamous thesis.
Yeah.
It'll be fun though. I'm excited about it. Well, man, today's guest was pretty sweet. I learned a ton about pre-con, which I never knew before. Because honestly, I have very little knowledge of pre-con, so it's fun to get to hear him talk about it and just his passion for it and learn a little bit more about him. What you think of it?
Yeah, I think it was awesome. Daniel talked about the different types of the process and how they bid, but also maybe his role coming up. And I think anybody that's young, it's a good point how he kind of defined it of what's expected as you go through that process to continue to grow the company. But the things I really thought was cool was he was a civil engineer and he just fumbled in construction.
Yep.
Another guy didn't really know how he's going to get there, but he got into construction and that's one of our main themes of the Laying Foundations podcast of what if we can get guys and gals, whomever, started at an earlier age to think about construction as a career and how we could better set them up. And then one more thing I just really did love was he showed that he was very diligent even in his times where yeah, he didn't make a huge mistake, but he wasn't afraid to make the mistake. But what I even loved more about that was his mental capacity to go, hey, someone's always watching me. Someone's always wanting to see how I succumb to pressure or how I overcome it. And he was
Right.
ready to rally even when he messed up. And I love that.
No, that was awesome. I mean, I couldn't have said it better than myself. So I'm gonna let that end it, and we'll go right into Daniel Kemack. So welcome to the show, man. Excited for you to be here. Well, Daniel, welcome to the show, man. We were really excited to have you on here. This is going to be a fun one because this is a lot of pre-con, and we haven't had a ton of people in pre-con on this show. So we're really excited to learn from you and get to hear all that you have to say and just learn a little bit about you. So, man, to start off with, let's just do it simple. Who are you? Where are you from? Who do you work for? What do you do?
My name is Daniel Kemack. I'm a pre-construction engineer at Wharton Smith Construction Group, based in Sanford, Florida. Um, I'm in the pre-construction department. I started my career off in pre-construction. When I was in college, my last semester, I did have a operations type of um, internship, and after going through all the years of engineering, I decided it wasn't really for me. So with that last semester, I wanted to branch out to the construction branch. Um, and I really gripped to that a lot better, just dealing with people more often and having
Right.
kind of group efforts
Mm-hmm.
with all the work that you do instead of being head down just at the computer and kind of just dealing with your boss every once in a while for design type stuff.
Right.
Um, so that's kind of the background of me getting into construction. The reason why I got into pre-construction was because when I was at that last internship, I thought, okay, like I kind of like this operations deal. Like the senior PM at the company that I was at, he was like top dog, right? So I was like, okay, I think I want to go for that. That seems like a good status to be at. He's got a lot of responsibility. Keeps his head held high. So I was like, if I'm going to do that, I got to start at the beginning. I want to understand all of construction if I'm going to be at that level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that comes from. And so after I graduated, I took a trip, came back. I honestly I didn't have a job lined up, but I found a junior estimating position at a smaller kind of senior living renovation company, and so I started from there. And it's been just over 3 years now. 17, 18. Okay, it's been almost 5 years now.
Time flies.
Yeah, I know, right? Um, but yeah, it's been great. I love it. I love my job. I love the people I'm around. It's really about the environment to me.
Mm,
How do you feel around those people? So I really appreciated them and everything that I've done for myself, really,
right.
since starting school.
Right. Daniel, where did you go to school?
I went to University of Central Florida
Okay.
in Orlando. I kind of live in Orlando. I live in Altamont Springs, which is essentially the Orlando
Right.
area, but
That's right.
Central Florida. I grew up in the East Coast, Melbourne, Florida, just about an hour to the east over there, and is where I've been my whole life.
Mm,
I I do have kind of long-term plans, maybe to relocate. That's kind of preliminary at the moment, but my company has satellite offices, one specifically in Charlotte. So when I got hired almost 2 years ago, I just, I was like, hey, this is kind of in the back of my mind. We could see what happens. But that's potentially an option.
Right.
We still have some time to talk about it. Again, I'm not betting on it. A long time ago, I stopped planning so far ahead. You just kind of
You're right. That's
Ain't
right.
that the truth?
in front of you. Yeah, yeah. So you just do what's in front of you, and then you just kind of day by day, week by week kind of thing.
That's right. And I was just kind of curious, what does it look like as a pre-construction engineer? I hear that, and I'm in construction. I'm kind of don't really know. I mean, obviously, I can follow that, but what kind of is that role? What's the day to day look like at Wharton?
So basically, for a pre-construction engineer, you're essentially just supplementing the pre-construction manager or the estimator lead for the project.
Okay.
And what that means is because he's going to oversee the whole process, whether it's through hard bid or it's through GMP, design, build, CMAR, stuff like that. So basically, what we do is we help them with, we'll make phone calls to the subs during bid phasing, and just make sure that they're bidding, go over the scopes with them. We'll also help with the quantity takeoffs. We use our PlantSwift software for all of our quantity takeoffs.
Okay.
And with like a big, I'm going to use a school project for an example, a brand new school project, $50 million range average. It's hard for one person to handle all that scope. So that's kind of where the pre-construction engineers, just below the managers or just below the assistant pre-con managers. And again, we're just supplementing the lead and just helping them get through it. And you're learning and understanding all these processes as you go. So that's kind of what we do day to day.
Okay, so in terms of the team or with a project like that, a $50 million school project, how many guys in the pre-con department would typically work on a project of that size?
Honestly, it just depends on what our schedule's looking like, how many schools we may have going on at the time. It doesn't necessarily work like that, but we'll have little jobs, we'll have a few big jobs. So we try to work around when we have a big job like that coming through, and we'll make space to make sure that everyone has a piece of it, and it's not all the workload's not on one guy. So we could have up to 4 or 5 guys kind of splitting up all the scopes. And it's not necessarily set in stone, but we've got some of the seasoned veterans who are more privy to concrete masonry, or another guy who's MEP. He just has 30 years experience dealing with MEP, so he might take on the MEPs. Another guy will do concrete masonry. We'll have a smaller guy do all the finishes, because I would say that's the most simple. Sometimes it can be really strenuous, but in terms of complexity, they're very simple.
Yeah, my bad, Walker.
Oh, you're good, man. I was going to ask, you talked about the quantity takeoff and for those of you who don't know, quantity takeoff is just taking how many materials are in a project and saying we have, however many square feet of drywall we got to put in this project. That's pretty much it. Correct?
Right.
I
call it connect the dots for adults, really.
Yeah, there we go. That's perfect. And so in terms of, for y'all's department of QTO, you mentioned that you kind of fill in the gaps as you need to. Do you have one estimator that's kind of over all of that? Or do you kind of have a few estimators kind of the same way that handle different portions of the job?
Yeah, so like I was saying, a couple of the managers who have been in the have all the experience for the past 30 years or 20 years or whatever it is. The bottom line is that we all do Takeoff.
Okay, so the managers are kind of, you're saying the managers are kind of the estimators, so they're pretty much the same type of role right there.
Right. So we have a handful of pre-con managers. We have some senior pre-con managers. We have pre-con managers. We have an assistant pre-con manager. And then there's a few pre-construction engineers, and I'm one of them. And then we also have interns.
Okay, so different. We're using different terminology, but we're talking about the same things. I got you.
Yeah. So whether you're a manager or you're an intern, if you're working on a $50 million school project, if you're up high, you have all the understanding, and if you're an intern, you just want to get the takeoff done, and then you're going to review it with the lead most likely, because he needs to oversee that and make sure that everything's correct. But it's the same thing from manager to manager. You might review the scope, or he'll hand off the scope. He'll put his takeoff into the estimate. All of our estimates are in Excel, and we'll just everyone just fact check, peer review, make sure there's no holes. It's sometimes I say it's kind of inevitable to not miss a single thing, but you do your best. That's why it's called an estimate.
Right. That's right. You're doing your best guess. And that's the funny part. I don't think we've ever got it, 100% right. But before we get too into the weeds about talking about the bid process, which is, I'm really excited about because I'm going to get to learn a lot from you. Have a lot of questions on that. I wanted to backtrack, and you talked about how you saw someone in your company as a senior PM and you went into the pre-construction role. This is something Gareth mentioned to us. Gareth from the niche company. He mentioned that people only recruit for like 25% of pre-construction. In the next few years, he sees it going to 50%. Like, that's a huge shift. What does that look like? Does Wharton Smith, are they really trying to get as many pre-con people as possible, or are y'all, kind of on that 25 to 75% of the rest of the operations?
Well, I can't say in the short term. We are bringing some more folks on, a couple more interns, and I was going to touch on this, but luckily you asked this question. The way that the interns kind of work for us in pre-construction, I know it's different with interns in operations, for example. You can bring a guy in, you can have him help for the summer job, and I'm not necessarily saying that you just quickly turn around interns, but because if they do well, they most likely stay and they want to have a career there. But I think it's more of an ease in operations to do that. Well, with pre-construction, it's not so much like that, because you spend a few months just teaching them how to do what we do,
Right.
and then for them to just leave or decide that they don't want to do it anymore, it doesn't really lend itself for our department. So our goal is to teach them all the way up to where they can operate to the fullest extent, and then hire them on. Hopefully, that's the goal really with the interns. I mean, we're pretty busy right now. I've been slammed for the past month for sure, which is good. I mean, I like being busy.
What is the main area that y'all's company focuses on?
We're really into schools. We deal with a lot of school districts,
educational, institutional type things.
Educational, yes. A lot of commercial stuff too. I was gonna name a couple of types of projects that I've dealt with, but I've dealt with training buildings for water wastewater plants. Just a quick ad: we have a whole water wastewater division to our company as well, like estimating, construction. Oh, wow. Yeah, they self-perform the concrete for those water wastewater treatment plants. But I don't fully understand it. I just know I'm slowly learning a little bit every time what they do. But yeah, so that's kind of where that's at.
I gotcha. And kind of just transitioning here, if we start to jump into the bid process, I have a few things of, I don't have much pre-construction experience, but I did work as an intern online. And so I was just cold calling subs, and I just kind of wanted to know, what's the process? Is it, we have a lot of relationships and we have a lot of subcontractors we're close with, and, we get a lot of their numbers. Are we hard bidding? What does that look like for y'all? And I know it's probably going to vary project to project, but what does that look like for you?
It does. But since we primarily do educational, we do a lot of CM, design build, with a little bit of hard bid. I've only done a handful of hard bids, like maybe less than 5, and it's been 2 years. Just to give you some insight. So it's continuing services for school districts, it's new schools for those districts, or it's city type projects like recreational parks, or county projects like like the Justice Center, juvenile detention type stuff. We have a couple items like that are active at the moment, but so it's not just educational. So again, that being said, CM design build, your question was from the beginning to the end, or just kind of how we deal with it.
Yeah, I was just curious to what that process is like. Are y'all just cold calling subcontractors and hoping to get numbers, or do y'all have established relationships where y'all are just kind of relying on them? What is that like?
Right. Okay. So as you were saying, it does depend project to project. If it's a design build project that's from the early stages all the way to the end, we'll work with the design team. We'll get to that first kind of conceptual design or 60% design development, and we may want to bring in some subs because we want today's dollars feedback, right? And also account for escalation in the future. So we might bring a couple guys in because if the design is long enough, we can have them price it for us. Otherwise, if it's not developed enough, we have enough historical data to come up with a an estimate. And again, that's kind of early stages, 60%. And then you get into the construction documents, your 90% or 100%. And that's when you go full blown cold calling subs. Like that's where the interns and the lower guys really come into play of just slamming the phones trade by trade, making sure that they're going to bid, make sure that they understand what's going on.
Right.
And for projects of a large scale, we'll typically do scopes of work because we have the documents, but just to make sure nothing's missed whatsoever, we'll essentially write it all out so they know exactly to a T what to bid to. And that transfers over to operations because my understanding is that you guys do scopes of works anyway to do your contracts, right? So so that lends itself when you get into your 90%, 100% documents. And again, with the takeoff, with the 60%, if they're developed enough, we can quantify everything, and it shouldn't change that much to the 90s and the hundreds. Or it's usually one or the other. It's not necessarily 90% and then 100%. It's just either your GMP docs. With projects of that size, it's difficult just to just grind and spend all this time on just taking off the entire job because it's a lot. And unfortunately there's no shortcut around it. Like you just have to do it.
Could you kind of go into detail a little bit more about the design build process? Because I haven't gotten a ton of exposure to that before in my experience, and because I think it's becoming more common, especially for larger companies. That's a lot common, but or a lot more common. But for a lot of majority of companies, it's usually design bid build, to where they just get a project thrown at them and they have to do it. So what is it kind of from getting contacted by the owner or the architect? Typically, it's the owner, correct?
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
how does it look like from getting contact from the owner all the way to getting to the point where you're having to call subs and make sure that they're going to be able to come bid or want to bid the project, etc.?
So, so I can give you an example. The active project that we have right now that's still in design. It's we're kind of in the 60% stage. We're slowly getting into 90% docs. But as you were saying, the owner will reach out, facilitate their intent for what the project is, and then the construction manager will group with the design team, the architect, the engineer, structural, all the folks that need to be involved. And the first stage is to come up with a presentation to get shortlisted, and it's public speaking, everyone's worst nightmare, and just having the appropriate package based on the design criteria of the job, which is massive. It's not just a small binder. It's just like document after document
Jeez.
and reading and reading and reading and understand every single guideline. So it's not an easy task, and that's why you have an entire team, not just the CM and the architects and the engineers. I mean, a team just in this construction manager in the pre-con team to work together, and as well as operations. Operations for sure is included. Again, to put this whole package presentation together, get shortlisted, and then I believe go through, and it probably depends, but I believe go through another presentation. So you get shortlisted, and then you go again to actually get the job awarded to you.
Jeez. Wow.
Yeah. and the design is slowly happening as all this is going on, right? So I partook on a job that's current right now. It's Seminole County Justice Center, and I dealt with all the site utilities. So there's 3 new buildings, a whole CEP plant to feed the entire this whole existing complex to the courthouse kind of thing. I won't get into those fine details, but again, I dealt with all the site work and the utilities. That's just kind of my
That was
bread
a
and
lot.
butter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a lot. I mean, there's a building, a parking garage, and again, the CEP plant by itself, like those are also massive scopes by themselves. So we kind of split that one into 5 parts or 4 parts, sorry. And again, we're still working on it. So so hopefully that
What
kind of gives you some insight.
real quick? What is CEP? Is that like civil, electrical, plumbing, or
It's a central energy plant.
okay?
So
It
your
wasn't even close.
chillers, yeah.
Yeah. I'm on a.
Yes.
You're good. I'm on a job right now where we call it CUP. So CUP. I was like, it's got to be CEP. We call it Central Unit Plant. But man, Walker, we got to learn about this at least in our mechanical class about chillers and boilers. But
Right.
going and being on the job and learning from those guys, oh my,
I bet it's crazy.
you have
Yeah.
such a greater understanding of what they do every day. Like, I don't know about you, Daniel, but do you think you're an expert in, the CEP? Like, you
Not at all.
can't. It's crazy.
Not
So
at all.
that's pretty cool. How did you go about, pricing that? I mean, that's insane.
So to my point earlier, we brought in a handful of guys, a handful of subcontractors that we deal with all the time. So I reached out to a specific site contractor that we deal with on a lot of our schools, and I just sat down with them and I was like, "Hey, this is our current design. This is what we're thinking. Can you help put a price to it so that when we submit, this was to submit to the owner, um, to ultimately get the job awarded to us." And it's their best guess against your best guess.
Yeah, that's right.
So you can either stick to your guns and think what you think, or you can meet halfway, or if you're like, okay, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe they know better than me. And again, they're the experts in that field, so you want to take that into account when you can.
So when it comes to the whole pre-con process, I know you've been in there for a few, like 5 years now or so. What is your favorite part of the pre-con process? Like, what is your, hey, I want to do this. This is what I absolutely love.
I can't say that I honestly have a favorite thing to do, but I do overall enjoy all aspects of it. I mean, sometimes if I'm being honest, sometimes I don't want to do any of it.
That's fair. I
But
think that's with every job.
yeah, no, that's just the circle of life, right? But from just going out to the site visits and meeting the guys, meeting new guys, meeting the same guys, phone calls do get kind of tedious sometimes because it's like you want it to be a quick call and then it turns into a 20-minute call and you're like,
That's fair.
okay, there's not enough time
Have
in
to
the day for
listen
all
to
that.
some guys spiel of why they're great. Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah. Going into the details of his scope specifically, and it's like, I just want to know if you're gonna give me a price, man. It's okay. We'll get into that when we get the job, No, I'm just joking. But and then I mean, okay, well, if I had to pick one, getting in the zone and doing the takeoffs, like for some reason if you make it a game, I make it a game most of the time.
Kind of fun.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. Because and I can explain why that is. We had this was for a city owner, one of their public works facility. We just completely renovated the entire facility. Like it just needed a whole new upgrade, right?
Wow.
And so I was saying that most of the time with big projects, we have a handful of guys on it. Well, this
Right.
time it was like 2 to 3 guys. And so I had like 60% of the job, was like I was in charge of.
Jeez.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the site work, the mechanical, electrical, and the plumbing, and then all the concrete masonry and the finishes and specialties with someone else. So I was just grinding on that, like a couple long nights, nothing crazy. I was just so into it. I just didn't care to leave. I was like, yeah, I just want to keep going. So to answer your question, yeah, that might be something that's really interesting. But you have to be in that mindset. It's not naturally going to be like that.
Right.
You have to be excited about it yourself.
The zone.
Yeah.
So how does, when you're doing the quantity takeoff, how does that software work? Does it find it for you kind of, or do you have to go in there and like because we had an estimating class at Auburn to where, and they did the very basics, but we had to go in and literally drag, point here, that's 100 feet, and then et cetera, or count the studs or whatever, so are you physically like counting every piece, or does the software kind of help you out to where you can kind of get a basic overall view of a wall or whatever?
No, you essentially have to put everything in yourself
Jeez.
because, you have this blank space, you bring all the drawings in and it lists them page by page from the cover sheet all the way to that last, what's usually last, electrical,
Yep.
maybe.
Usually.
Something like that, yeah.
Usually, yeah. So, you got to make sure you can pick the scale. It can help you scale the drawing easily, but when it comes to takeoff, like it's up to the estimator to quantify everything properly.
So you really have
Now,
to like visualize it in your head when
Yeah.
you're doing this.
Yeah.
right now, like a simple example, because this is construction manager estimating doing takeoff. So when we're taking off drywall, I'm just making sure that I've got the linear footage of the floor plan and the height of the wall. I'm not
Okay.
counting studs and nails and stuff like that. That's for the
Right.
subcontractor to do. I just need to make sure the overall square footage is there because drywall guys don't even price drywall by square footage.
Really?
Yeah. And every time we talk to them, they're like, "Oh, I don't understand how you're doing that." And I'm like, "Well, can you explain to me how you do it so we could try to like find the happy medium?" And
How do they price it?
Is it
I
linear?
still don't know. I have
Oh,
no idea.
really?
Yeah.
I need
I mean,
Hilarious.
I need to hit my
They just
friend
throw
up.
you a number.
Yeah.
well, if I had to guess, it would be because drywall comes in, was it 4x8 sheets? Then your
Okay.
linear. I'm assuming they might figure out a board or per linear length of 2x4, or whatever your stud is, 3 5/8 metal studs.
Right.
And then I'm sure they just figure X amount of nails or bolts, per however many
I
linear
have
footage
no
of wall
clue.
they do.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
plus insulation,
Yeah.
plus anything else that you got to put in there.
Right. That's right.
And that's just drywall. We didn't even talk about anything else.
That's right. Do the estimator, do the drywall guys where you're from or not in Florida, do they finish as well? Because I'm down in New Orleans on my job. The
Mhm.
drywall guy and the guy that frames are one guy, but then the guy that finishes and paints is someone else. And to me, in Birmingham, it was you frame it, you put the drywall on, you finish it, and sometimes you even might paint it. You might do the ceilings. Like it's just one guy that does everything. What is that like in Florida?
So typically, painters are all by themselves. So you have your painters; they'll do the sealed concrete, and then I think you'll have another guy do polished concrete specifically. I think I said that right. Drywallers can do ceilings. It depends on the sub. We have a couple subs that do drywall, acoustic ceilings. Obviously, hard lid ceilings are included in the drywall,
Right. That's right.
and some of them do flooring too.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I guess it just
But not all flooring. It's like specific.
right.
Yeah.
I think it just varies by region. That was my superintendent told me. He goes, "That's the one thing. If you move around, you'll see how each trade package will change from the west to the central to the east of Florida." But before we move on to the next point, I just wanted to make a point. Before I took that estimating class and really had an internship where I knew about estimators, I was just like, man, what do those guys do? Hey, they're just sitting in the office. I don't know, like, just young and don't know. And now that we have this better understanding, at least for me, I don't know about you,
Mhm.
Walker, but these estimators have to make this building come to life in their head three-dimensionally while they're taking it off. And like you said, do your best guess at trying to get this quantity takeoff to be a accurate total so that your company's going to make money off of that. To me, that's mind blowing to where I used to thought, oh, they just sit in the office. They don't do anything.
Right. And I I really love being in this industry, having a civil engineering background. I don't even know if I mentioned that in the beginning, but I went to school for civil engineering, if I didn't mention that. Decided to
Right.
get into construction.
Yeah.
So just having an engineering background and just like trying to have a bird's eye view of everything, because I feel like that's how you
Right.
think as an engineer.
That's right.
You're not into the fine details, you're looking at everything big picture. So
Mhm.
when we're analyzing buildings or whatever the job is, um, I just visually I do really well with trying to understand what that is. And that's obviously that's what all the plans, the wall details, the small details. That's what all that's for, to help you put it together. But if you can visualize it almost instantaneously, that's the main goal.
Right. And I think that comes with experience. It's got to be because I went to, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I had a great opportunity to go get trained about becoming a superintendent. Obviously, I'm way from that. But anyway, the guys told me, they go, as a superintendent that's been doing this for 30 years, he'll tell you, he's like, I can walk a floor and tell, what's going on as I walk on the floor. You, as a young guy, your first year out of college, you're just flying by and don't realize all the stuff that I can pick out. And it just comes with experience. And I
Right.
hate that because that just, hey, that's time right there. We just got to wait for that one.
Yeah, because you just want the experience now, but it's not how it
Right.
works.
It's not how it works. And I had another question. I was just curious about this. So, when I was an intern, I found out that this past summer that the superintendent, I want to be a superintendent. The superintendent, that while he didn't have a job, he actually got to go and help out in the pre-con office. And when he was there, they were trying to figure out which job he was going to be on, and they used him to, hey, this is how I'm going to do site logistics. This is what I would do with this. Do y'all do something like that with y'all's company?
Yeah, so whoever the operations lead is, project manager most of the time, right? For the project. As we get close to the hard bid or the GMP, we'll get together. We'll coordinate with him on GCs and GRs for the project. Just make sure we're covered for our field guys. And if site utilization or logistics plans are necessary for the submission, we'll have them put that together, and we'll help along the way. Um, that's definitely a portion of the process. And sometimes, us as estimators, we're trying to think of that in advance, because again, we're thinking about the building, but there's more than just the building and the site. It's what we're actually there to do. Construction fencing, construction entrances,
Yeah.
portalets, safety meetings, all that type of stuff. You got to have a field office. Do we have location for parking? What's the space of the job? How much room do we have to work with? Where are we going to do laydown for everything? Stuff like that. So while
It's a lot.
operations is helping with that, we got to think about all that stuff too.
That's right.
I feel like that can become kind of like a puzzle. I mean, does that get pretty fun starting to look at a project and you trying to figure out where different things are going to go, or how much we're going to have for this? And
For sure, yeah. There was I was just thinking about a project. It was a hard bid. This one, I think it was like a condo complex, and they had like four major towers. It was like a square
wow,
configuration.
big.
So they had four major towers. In the center was like the pool area, and up front they had like a really nice clubhouse. Well, that was the extent of the site. Like there was no room for laydown, and like there might have been room for the main office, the construction office. So we were like looking across the street where the owner owned another piece of land, I think. And it's like, hey, what's the cost to rent this? Because we need it for parking and lay down. So like, it becomes a game too.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. We were on a project, or I was on a project as an intern, and it fell through. But like the university, it was Vanderbilt University, and they owned a little house that they were gonna rent to the company I was working with, and Leighton, and they were gonna rent to Leighton, and that fell through. So they ended up having to find a place, a little office in this complex up above the Starbucks somewhere, like right across the street from it, was just drastically more expensive than it was going to be. So I feel like just finding then they have to rent parking spaces in a parking deck, and the subs were kind of on their own to figure out how they're going to park typically, I guess, on that project, because it's a city, so you're talking about the condo. It's just like there's no space, and which is where lean construction and those type of principles come into place, or just in time construction. Do y'all use a lot of that on your projects, or is that something that y'all kind of haven't implemented yet, or what?
I don't think so. It doesn't necessarily sound familiar to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess it's more of an operations thing. It's more just getting the project there on time. So I guess going along with that, when y'all when y'all bid a project, when y'all work with a project, do you pass it on to the operations and you're just kind of like, all right, cool, we don't have to worry about that anymore? Or do y'all kind of still stay involved throughout the life cycle of the building to final completion?
It's more so we have a designated turnover meeting where pre-con hands over the
Okay.
project to operations. We get everyone involved. We get Marcom, safety, kind of the other, aside from pre-construction and operations, we get a couple other divisions included in the meeting. And as the estimator, I'll just run through the estimate, the summary, just go over the scope line item by line item in our estimate as we see it. Just make sure there's any, do we have any questions? Is there any holes in our sub pricing, or do we have an error? And it happens, and you gotta operation tip, they'll come through and with buyout, they'll come through with buyout and help out if we made a mistake, which they happen. Haven't had any major mistakes, but just a
always a
couple minor
positive.
ones. Yeah, I know. Well, my first thought is, well, it could have been twice that, or
Yeah.
could have been 10 times that amount. So
Yeah. You're able to sleep at night, right?
yeah, because
Uh,
it's when you swear you looked at it 10 times over before you like submitted it or whatever it is, and you just twice it's happened. I couldn't
Right.
believe that I had the error, but again, it
Yeah.
happens.
That's right. Daniel, so I'm going to take us a little off course, not even really related to construction, but I'm going to try to get us there.
Sure.
Walker, bear with me. But what
Hmm.
is it like being in the pre-construction side? I'm going to ask that question first, and then I'm going to try to give you a story. So
Okay.
my uncle is he's a very detailed guy. I mean, I think he's funny, but he went and got a job at Dynetics, and he works with a lot of the NASA contractors in Huntsville. But he is a guy that doesn't think he's really all that outgoing, pretty quiet, pretty detailed, and he is the guy that works with a bunch of PhDs that are literally rocket scientists, and he's the guy that has the big outgoing personality that they think that he's hilarious. And so I'm just thinking about the pre-construction world, and if it's tying together, tell me if it is. But if it's not, I'll try my best. But what is it like personality wise? Is it similar where all guys are kind of just in the weeds? Because I'm thinking about it. You literally are just in this all day, trying to read, trying to find what's right. What is it like with the personalities on your team?
I would say that in pre-construction, that everyone is pretty outgoing, and you have to be that way, because someone who's not outgoing is really going to dread calling people all day long, or not even all day long, just a couple of hours out of the day.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, I'll be honest, I'm kind of both ways, outgoing, and you like to have alone time. I think anyone is like that. But then you have like extreme extroverts and extreme introverts to where
Right,
they're not like that at all.
right.
So, I get it over with. I make the phone calls. I put on a happy face and talk to everyone. And then when it comes to doing takeoff, I don't have to talk to anyone.
Yeah,
I just
that's
like
right.
I listen to my music, and I just go to town until it's time to go, or until I'm done.
Yeah, I get in that zone. Yeah, I think it's
Hmm.
interesting because a few years ago I would have definitely been an introvert. I think I am, but I guess as this podcast, as I'm growing, I get out of a meeting that we just had. Felt like it took forever, but I'm more energized. We spend like 2 hours talking, and that's what an extrovert is. They love it. If they're in a meeting talking to everybody and I'm involved, I'm fired up, ready to go to the next thing. And I think
Hmm.
that's similar to how I feel with whenever I get off the call with Walker. I'm like, man, we just did great. Just love it. Let's keep going. But
True.
anyway, I just thought that was a cool thing.
Hmm.
And so I kind of just to transition really quick. I kind of wanted to talk about you. You're 5 years removed from graduating college, and you got some real world experience under your belt. You're doing great, and let's talk about a time, and if you had a time where you're really green eyed, you're ready to conquer the construction world, and you get there and you maybe didn't do as good as you thought, or you maybe messed up. What was that like? An eye opening experience.
Um, so just to be clear, are you like being more specific, like for a project or maybe like an assignment that I might have had?
Yeah, just anything that you're willing to share.
Um, I mean, luckily I can say I don't really have any situations like that now. Um, like I was saying before, like when we make mistakes, sometimes they're small, sometimes they're bigger mistakes, and it really sucks. And again, I haven't had a huge mistake happen, and I really hope that it never does happen, because, and it's not like I'm going to get fired over it, but because, you got to work as a team and get through the mistake. That's the thing. You can sit there and sulk about what happened and how you messed up or whatever it is, but what are you going to do to fix it instead of sulk about it? And then again, make sure that it
That's
doesn't
good.
happen again. So you're going to, you might change some of your processes of how you do things so that you don't make the mistake. Put sticky notes on your monitors, or just don't do that method again. So you just have to think critically. How are you going to fix that? And what can you do next time to save yourself, really? Um, because I think the other thing too, being a smaller guy on the totem pole, when stuff like that does happen, and I've got my boss or just other executives that see how you react to situations, you want to react the proper way, and that could be for anything. I don't even have anything in mind. I'm just saying when they sometimes you think people don't see you, but they do see you. So all your actions count, and if you just keep up with everything, and you just have a good work ethic, and you have a positive attitude, and you have a good mindset about what's happening, even when stuff's not going so well, you'll come out okay. And I know that's easier said than done, but it's just as long as if you think about it,
Right.
that's just the start.
No, I love that. Sorry,
Yeah,
Walker.
that's
I know
huge.
you had something to say, but I love that because that's true. I mean, that's so hard. You like you said, maybe it's a smaller mistake, maybe it's a big one, but you're having that positive attitude, and they see you. Okay, this guy's got it. When the pressure's on, he's willing to grow and adapt. Sorry, Walker.
No, you're good, man. I think also something not to gloss over is the fact that you said, basically everyone's watching you. Someone's always watching, and I think that's true for life in general. It's just when you're doing something, or even just working or whatever you're doing, always try to be your best. Do
Hmm.
whatever you can as unto the Lord. It's just like someone is always going to take notice whether you are doing it the right way or the wrong way. And so you might as
Hmm.
well do it the right way and do it the best you can, because
Right.
if someone notices you're not doing that, then it's going to be a whole lot worse. And
Right.
it's true for life, true for work, it's true for everything. But
Hmm.
so what is in terms of, because you said that you were a civil engineer. Did you get it? Did you graduate as a civil engineer? Or did you switch degrees? What did you do?
So yeah, so I have a civil engineering degree.
Okay.
Actually, just recently I took the FE, so I have my
Oh,
EI
nice.
certification. So
Congrats,
now,
dude.
thank you, I appreciate it. It was bittersweet for sure.
I'm sure.
That's
I'm
awesome. I
sure.
bet it
Um,
was.
it was because honestly I didn't pass it the first time, which wasn't required to graduate, but
It's
Right.
tough.
again, everyone fails at some point, and that
Yeah.
was a failing point.
Ooh,
And
that's for sure. I
luckily, I came
a lot
back.
of
I
people.
came back, so now I'm going to study for the PE sometime this year for sure.
Congrats, man. That's awesome. That's
Thanks.
huge. So
I know.
as a civil engineering major, you went through most of your college career doing that.
Mhm.
Uh, what is something you didn't expect, or something a lot different about the construction industry than you initially thought growing up or going to school as a civil engineer? Because engineering and construction are a lot different in a lot of ways. They're similar, but they're a lot different in a lot of different ways. And from the people we've talked to and the people I've talked with personally, et cetera, I've learned that people and Davis used to be an engineer as well
Okay.
in college and switched to building science, but they think construction or construction people are a whole lot different than what they actually are, what actually goes on. So, what was your perception of that?
Um, well, my perception is that when I was in engineering school, one of my first internships, if you will, was for a geotechnical engineering firm.
Okay.
I was a CAD tech, so going uh into UCF, I was of the engineer mindset from the beginning. So like I started taking AutoCAD courses like in high school and when I was getting my AA, and then I transferred over to get my bachelor's, right? Um, so design work, AutoCAD, that's what engineers do. So I went into the geotech field because it was through a mutual friend. It's engineering. I was like, I'll start somewhere. Geotech, dirt, soil, really simple, right?
Right.
Um,
Crazy.
I did a lot of field work over the summer with that company. I was there for like 2 years. It was more than an internship, really. I was there for like 2 years. I did the CAD
That's
tech.
awesome.
I would do sample tests in our lab. all the geotech type stuff. And again, for some of the summers, I would go out in the field and do soil borings with our drill rig. And so to me, that was construction to me. So to me, I kind of had a taste of it in the field, kind of way. So my perception of construction and what I thought of it when I was in school is it never really changed. I just didn't know. That was the main thing. I just didn't know about it.
Right.
Yeah.
We find that that's really the common theme among a lot of people on this show is, we interview people in the construction industry, real estate, etc. But most of the time they don't even realize, and people ask me, I'm sure they ask y'all too, it's like, what do you do? It's like, well, I work for a general contracting firm. They're like, oh, cool. What do they do? It's like, in layman's terms, we build that building, and so they're like, oh, okay, cool. No one really knows about construction. They one day see a building that is built and don't really put more thought into that. So I think that's pretty interesting because even people who've been in construction for 10, 20 years are like, yeah, I didn't really know anything about it until I just got a job as a GC. One of my best friends graduated with a mechanical engineering degree and wanted to go into the oil industry, but right now the oil industry is not very great, and so he ended up working for Brassfield and Gorey, the same company as Davis. And he really enjoys it. And he had never thought about going into construction until now, and he likes it a lot. And Davis actually got a chance to meet him at their little
RJ, that's right.
RJ, yeah, one of my best friends in the world. Incredible dude. Love that guy.
Yeah. I was gonna add on to what you said about what we usually say when we're the GC, and we say, oh, we build that building. Well, we really just manage them building the building.
Very true.
But that doesn't sound as cool. Yeah. That doesn't sound as cool as we built that building. So
right. That's very fair.
We'll just leave it at that.
Walker has actually mentioned that before too, because it was like, we've slowly transitioned as GCs from doing the work to, all right, how can we get y'all to do the work? But
yeah.
It's gotten so complex, and so everybody wants it done, like this. So I like that though. Walker, I like the point you saw there, because I think back to my time. I should have made this connection earlier, Daniel, was, I was a quote unquote in school for civil engineering, and you lasted about 3.5 years longer than I did. So that shows you my track record there. But, I go in and try to be a civil engineer, and, I think that, hey, when I get done this, I'm going to go be in construction. I didn't know what I was doing. And then slowly after I took, 2 or 3 maths that first semester, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this. So, transition into building science where they still had math and physics. I didn't get the easy way out, but it's just crazy how, that's literally one of the reasons why we started this podcast, was to get the word out on what construction is. It's not just construction. There's engineering professionals, there's design professionals, there's lawyers, insurance. It's just, there's this plethora of everything. Then you have the office staff that supports all of us. So you could literally get an HR degree. You could go get you could start working in technology and somehow end up in the construction. It's just such a cool world.
All right, Daniel, we're starting to get towards the end of the podcast here, man. Before we go, we want to ask you, man, this question we ask everyone, and it's just basically you're getting into your career now. You're past college. You're 5 years or so removed. You got goals and dreams of career-wise that you want to do, life-wise, and so what is something that you've learned, something that you wish you could go back and tell your 18, 20-year-old self now, moving forward in life, a piece of advice that would really be beneficial to you?
It's interesting that you do ask that, actually, because first of all, it wasn't that long ago. I'm only 26, right? But if I was going to go see myself, my 20-year-old self, and tell him something, honestly, I wouldn't really change anything. I would say, hey, man, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you're doing. You've been through a lot, not with just school, but just you've had trying situations in your life so far, and you didn't let it get the best of you, most importantly. So you didn't give up when that could have been the easy solution, could have been the easy way out, is just to give up on yourself. And you didn't. So you kept pushing, and that's really what I would say to myself. And I just think if someone told me that back then, and it was me from the future,
Yeah.
that would make me feel so good, and I would just be proud that I'm doing what I'm doing.
That's great. That's the first. That's the first. That's the first answer to that question we've ever had answered that way. I love it. That's really cool.
Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate
That's
it.
awesome. Well, man, we really appreciate you coming on the show and being willing to share your time with us. Spend your afternoon / night with us a little bit. And thank you so much. Seriously, we really appreciate it. We learned a ton from you. It's awesome.
For sure. No, yeah, it was great. I appreciate you guys inviting me on here. We could keep talking for another hour or so, but maybe we can have a podcast at a later date or something.
Oh yeah,
There you
heck
go.
yeah.
Part
For
2,
sure.
Daniel. Where is he
Part
at
2.
now?
Yeah. Sounds good. Let's set it up.
Let's do it, man. I appreciate it, Daniel. Thank you for joining the Laying Foundations podcast.
Thanks, guys.